Hey everyone! We humans love ranking things, and today I'm going to rank my favorite greetings. Hola, konnichiwa, apa kabar? Hey everyone! Now that's a solid first. Yeah, that's right, ranking things are interesting to humankind. So today, as per a Meek Ale classic, I'm going to be sharing my personal ranks for the top 10 kaiju from the series Ultraman Dyna. Ultraman Dyna is an all-time favorite of mine, a big piece of my childhood, and a big piece of my life as a whole too. It's an episodic show like the usual Ultraman fare, but as the second big production after Tiga, it had quite an ambition and tons of creativity put in the show's 40 plus monsters throughout 51 episodes. As the middle child of the Heisei trilogy, Dyna's kaiju gallery is typically less standout compared to Tiga's and Gaia's. Tiga had iconic kaiju like Kyrialoid and Golza, and Gaia had the modern classic Gun-Q. Dyna's more like a... what? Even all of their final battles, Tiga fought the Lord of Darkness Gatan of Thor, Gaia and Agur fought the Destruction Angel Zogu, while Dyna fought a pile of angry CGI. Dyna even got the short end of the Five Kings stick as only one Dyna kaiju was used for it, while Tiga and Gaia had two, and at that, Reikubas was only an arm and Five King hardly uses Reikubas powers. However, I have to say this before the Dyna fans come at my door. Recently, Dyna's kaiju gallery has been getting lots more love, like with Zelganoid getting more traction, Geomos getting recognition for his insane feats, and even Reikubas as Five Kings component. Dyna in general has been getting lots more appreciation nowadays too. When I think about it again, Dyna's kaiju were overall really fun and creative, that it was really hard to list a top 10. Anyway, before we begin, this top 10 ranking is determined by the criteria of design, concept, memorability, creativity, and most importantly, personal bias. At 10th place stands Neosaurus. Neosaurus is a monster experimented on by Dr. Otomo, a TPC scientist who wanted to make his own monsters but got kicked out of the organization. This kaiju has a killer design, and really sells the look of an apex monster, and even looks like something a child might come up with when designing a strong monster. With all its many spikes, Neosaurus was definitely meant to be a tribute to Jiras from the original 1966 series. Both kaiju were experimented on by monster-obsessed scientists, Dr. Otomo for Neosaurus and Dr. Nikaido for Jiras. Both scientists also got killed by an accident caused by their monster too, although Neosaurus also invokes a tribute to Red King, as the scenes of him beating up two other monsters, Silvergon and Sildron, are reminiscent of Red King's debut thrashing Shandora with Mygular just around. All in all, really solid kaiju in the traditional sense. Next up, at number 9, we have Glossena, and Cyclometra 2 by extension. These two monsters appear in a memorable episode of the series, Episode 3, Awaken Asuka, in which Asuka learns to take more responsibility for his recklessness and arrogance. It also happens to be the first ever episode of Ultraman that I've ever watched. Like I said, personal bias. However, let's not let that cloud my judgment. Glossena is still really cool. He's got some really meaty thighs, an abdomen that looks like a durian, and a unique head shape and snout. Not to mention his extension cord tail, which gave Dyna some trouble too. Now, Glossena was actually already dead at the start of the episode, killed by the original Guts crew. I like this because it gives weight to the idea that not all of the attack team's kaiju incidents are shown in the episodes, only the ones in which Ultraman actually has to step in, implying that, yes, they do get the job done themselves too every other time. Anyway, Glossena was actually reanimated by the space parasite Cyclometra, which Asuka previously failed to thoroughly dispose of. Cyclometra itself is actually the more dangerous threat here, as carelessly provoking it would cause its glands to create a huge explosion. Yup, this little thing is a pain. Look at how it heals Glossena. While I do have a soft spot for these two monsters, they're definitely very good ones in terms of the lore and as a natural device to help develop Asuka's character. Moving on, number 8 on this list goes to the blood-sucking life form Maricula. Its name is a combination of Merimo and Dracula. Merimos are rare small balls of alga found in some places in the world, such as Japan. Maricula originally started out as your average Merimos, but mutated thanks to a cosmic meteor that landed in a lake. And now they're blue. but don't let their appearance fool you, they suck your blood dry, leading to some surprisingly morbid scenes here in this episode, with everyone at the mercy of the mini Maricula. Later, all the small Maricula merge with each other to become the Kaiju-sized Maricula. I love the concept of Maricula. It's a cute little thing, and can even turn into a ball. Why didn't this guy have merchandise made for it? It's also surprisingly resilient. Speaking of which, the episode also has one of the wilder fight scenes of this show, with Dyna playing Maricula like he's a football. Also, Maricula's parasitic behavior and ability to merge into a giant being calls back to Magnia of Ultraman Dyna. Before we carry on, let's take a look at some honorable mentions. Monsarger, a pretty strong foe for Dyna, with an only weak spot being its plate on its head. However, I think he kinda got overshadowed by Hanejiro in his debut. Daigerun, a vicious carnivorous monster that got annoyed by the Geofront company and its terraforming projects. Dyna had to change into strong type for the first time to defeat it. Demogorg, a monster that came about a pretty interesting plan of using children's creations in a monster fighting game to come up with the strongest kaiju. It looks like a twisted yet futuristic T-Rex, and I like its design a lot. It reminds me of Weaponizer from Ultraman Dyna. Now back to our rankings. At number 7 is Zombayu. Zombayu is, let's see here, yes, a ghost ship monster. Its aim was to absorb souls of the inhabitants of planets that it thought was beautiful, and basically for a portion of the episode was controlling dead bodies of the alien shellback. It was a pretty formidable foe for Dyna, even giving Miracle type a hard time. I really like its design too. As you probably know, I like unconventional monster designs a lot, with Zombayu being quadruped and almost hiding the suit actor's figure entirely. Zombayu also reminds me of the Dodongo episode from the original Ultraman, especially this part where Dyna rides Zombayu and Ultraman rides Dodongo. And even the involvement of the alien shellback kinda throws back to the Mummy Man from that Dodongo episode. Next on our list, at number 6, is Garaon and the Major Aliens. I'll have you know this episode traumatized me as a kid. Look at this scene in particular. Oh. The Major Aliens are 3 aliens who had arrived on Earth with some plans to take over the world. In their first appearance, they posed as people running a toy factory, but were actually developing a gigantic weapon much bigger than Ultraman, Garaon. It was 400 meters tall. However, they were busted before they actually managed to complete Garaon, so they only fought back with Garaon's head. Their own disguises are actually flimsy too, and very easily can they turn back to alien form even with just a sneeze, but usually they just clap their hands. These guys returned 3 times in the series, all with different plans to defeat Dyna, yet all still dependent on Garaon. Garaon itself is a walking robotic head with short arms and legs. Its concept and appearance calls back to Garamon from Ultra Q, who was also a robot under control to cause trouble. Garaon also has 3 faces, which is a reference to Dada of the original series, who, you guessed it, also has 3 faces. So these guys made the list because they're really memorable in my opinion, and give some perspective to aliens living on our planet, even before Ultraman X and Ultraman Taiga explored it further recently. Garaon's design too, while intended to look dumb and funny, is still pretty kick-ass, especially the full-sized version of Garaon. Number 5 on this list would be Yumeno Katamari. Translated into English, that would mean clump of dreams, because it is in fact a monster made out of garbage. I'm gonna say it again, I like unconventional monsters, and Yumeno Katamari fits that quite well. Made up entirely of garbage, Yumeno Katamari is a kaiju formed from sentient garbage not content with being thrown in a dump, instead of being reused like the other rubbish. I think vengeful inanimate objects isn't an entirely original concept. It's shown up in lots of media over the years, and even recently there's a space trash monster Woola in Ultraman Taiga. But Yumeno Katamari stands out for literally just being garbage, without outside interference or mystic forces that cause it to take on a destructive form. And what do you know? This guy is actually super durable and could simply absorb Dyna's energy attacks. The episode itself is light-hearted and has a good environmental message encouraging reusing of all disposed stuff. Before we move on, it's time for some more honorable mentions. Geomos. Yeah, you got that right. I ranked a clump of garbage over Geomos. A composite sphere beast, there are two versions of Geomos and Neo Geomos. The two-parter episode was also the episode involving the original Guts members from Tiga, and the plotline also loosely follows that of the Prince of Monsters episodes starring Gomorrah from the original Ultraman. Definitely some solid episodes. Deathfacer, one of Dyna's most iconic enemies. Appearing in the movie, Deathfacer was a protection system ship that was secretly developed into the Monera's big weapon to defeat Ultraman Dyna. He has a very distinctive design and really serves to traumatize Asuka. Now back to the rankings again. At number 4 is Imitation Ultraman Dyna, or more accurately, the Gregorial Aryan. Now I am a sucker for evil counterparts of Ultraman, and the first half of the Heisei generation definitely gave us some of the most amazing kinds of Imitation Ultraman, with Mimos, Chaos Ultraman, and even Imitation Dyna. Imitation Dyna definitely got his popularity thanks to his inclusion in Ultraman Fighting Evolution 3 in Dyna's mission, as that game seems to be part of almost every Ultra fan's childhood. While others like Evil Tiga wanted to rule the world and Mimos was an agent of the Destruction Bringer, Imitation Dyna, the Gregor man, was just a space fighter who wanted to challenge the strongest enemy he's heard of, Ultraman Dyna. He brings along his own wrestling ring to have a good bout with Dyna, and doesn't care about the humans as long as they don't interrupt their battle. Part of his appeal is also his unique fighting style and his tendency to show off. The cross counter he and Dyna strong type had, revealing his true face beneath the mask, also holds up as some of the most iconic imagery from the Heisei era. The episode itself is also a fan favorite, continuing on about Asuka's self-doubt as Earth's protector, some funny moments true to the show's tone, and an absolutely cathartic payoff. Moving on, the number 3 kaiju for Ultraman Dyna is Zelganoid. Originally Terranoid, this artificial giant was a secret project by Officer Gondo to make their own giant so that they won't need to be dependent on Ultraman Dyna any longer. It was created by extracting light from Shin Asuka, whom Gondo had discovered was Dyna. Any old human could actually have their own light extracted, but they would die in the process, except for Asuka, who because he is Ultraman Dyna. When the spheres launched an attack on Mars, Terranoid was unleashed to defeat them, but all the stupid thing did was fire Solgen rays, and as expected, it ran out of juice extremely fast. The spheres took hold of the mindless Terranoid and corrupted it into Zelganoid. It even has an open mouth now! One of the most dangerous threats Dyna had faced up until that point, especially since his own energy had been depleted. It took 2 Solgen rays at point blank to eliminate Zelganoid. Zelganoid himself was only the enemy for the first part of the ending trilogy though, but is arguably the face of Dyna's finale because the real final boss is a big blob. Zelganoid is really iconic and his relevance had definitely shot up again after Ultraman Z's finale with Ultroid Zero, which is similar to the Terranoid plotline. While I already loved Dyna's ending, I thought that it would have been cooler if Zelganoid had survived for at least another episode. Replacing Neo Gigarate in the penultimate episode, it would definitely make his threat feel much more real, especially since it's already really scary. Next, at number 2 on this list, is the space monster Reikubas, or Reikubas, however you want to pronounce it. This lobster is probably Ultraman Dyna's most famous foe. He appears in FE3 in Dyna's mission, in Taiketsu Ultra Hero as a component of 5 King. It seems like if it's a Dyna kaiju, Tsuburaya will always pick Reikubas. Why is that? This kaiju showed up in an excellent Dyna 2-part episode, and Reikubas defeated Dyna in an iconic imagery of totally freezing the giant. Its design is basically a giant crustacean or a lobster, but looks raw and mean enough to be a huge threat. The amazing thing is, Reikubas isn't even the main course in his episode. It's merely an obstacle brought by Spoom to keep Dyna busy while it annihilates Superguards and tries to crash the artificial sun into the earth. Which is why I'm sad that the Reikubas vinyl figure is so much smaller than he's supposed to be. However, despite being the kaiju from Dyna, Reikubas has surprisingly never made a single new appearance after his own episode. If you squint really hard, we do see him in the black hole in Dyna's finale, and he does technically show up as 5 King, but that's not the point. I guess its suit was just not in good condition anymore after that, and even if they did want to make the suit again, they didn't think it was worth it instead of using Gubila for the 100th time. And now, for the final best kaiju of Ultraman Dyna, at number 1, it's Satan Lovemos. I like unconventional kaiju, and I also like corrupted nice things like Chaos Clevergon. Satan Lovemos is both of these. Couple that with it being an episode which embodies the main message of Ultraman Dyna, and you get my top 1 kaiju pick of the show. Lovemos, originally a space probe collecting samples from Saturn, went maniacal when it heard the sound of a space instrument that couldn't be heard by humans. It was brought back to Earth to troubleshoot the problem, but later went crazy again and turned into Satan Lovemos, absorbing a lot of the Super Guts arsenal along with it. Eventually the weird instrument was recovered, and after Mai played it with love, Lovemos went back to normal but wanted to be destroyed by Dyna, who refused. Lovemos was also a mascot for TPC that was pretty popular and even got his own merchandise and news coverage in the show, of course. I adored the design of Satan Lovemos, it taking all of Guts' arsenal and armoring its own body with it, making itself a threat with TPC's own firepower. It's always fun to see the sheer detail in kaiju designs, and Satan Lovemos definitely has this in spades. The Guts dig was almost going to impale Dyna. The running theme of the show is that technological advancement of humanity towards the future and the dangers of moving too fast. Asuka's dad's disappearance due to the Zero Drive project, the creation of Terranoid and therefore Zelganoid, the hacking of the Krakow by outerworldly forces, causing the artificial sun to approach the Earth, the silent creation of Deathfacer, and a lot more throughout the series. At a smaller scale, Lovemos also embodies this theme, being a lovable symbol of advancement to outer space, but without humanity, love and compassion, it fell victim to the risk of that very advancement. So those were the top 10 Dyna Kaiju. This series really hammed it up from its predecessor Tiga, and you can see it in the design and ambition of the monsters themselves. I mean, the show needed to go beyond Tiga in some way in order for it to continue its ratings, and I think it did a pretty good job. Every Ultra series has memorable kaiju. They'd at least have one, if not a lot. I'm looking at you, Greaser. Same goes with Ultraman Dyna and his own kaiju gallery. It was really hard to pick just a top 10 and a handful of honorable mentions, since I looked back and man do I love a lot of the kaiju of Dyna. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. There are some who say that the reason Ultraman Dyna's kaijus don't return as often is because their toys didn't sell very well. In that case, I forgot to mention that Ultraman Dyna's strongest enemy is capitalism.